So in this video, I'm going to break down everything I learned from a short playtest of NBA 2K26 from Community Day. I focused on dribbling, defense, shooting, and even the 5-on-5 gameplay and how the AI stacked up against me. The changes to dribbling and movement that has small guards, big guards, and hell, even demigods moving crazy out there. We're going to talk about the changes to rhythm shooting and whether the removal of RNG shooting feels a little bit too overpowered. I'm going to break everything down from some of the most overpowered animations that I saw from Community Day to some improvements that I think 2K might need to look at. Before we get started, I'd like to give a big shout out to NBA 2K for flying me out to get an early playtest of NBA 2K26. The big thing that you'll notice once you have the controller in your hands is that the game just feels faster in general. And this across all aspects of the game. So keep this in mind when we discuss mechanics later on. The game just feels naturally quicker. You couldn't see it in the trailers, but once you have it in your hands, everything from dribbling to closeouts to passing feels a little bit more snappy, and we'll discuss this within the specific gameplay aspects that we'll discuss later on. Everyone wants to know, is dribbling better than NBA 2K25? And unequivocally, I have to say it is. It feels like the natural evolution from NBA 2K25, where they sort of had their growing pains with year one implementation of the dribble engine. NBA 2K26 immediately feels faster, immediately feels more responsive, resulting in cleaner combos, more creative chains, and the ability when comboed with the cancel system to create a diverse set of moves that will have your defender confused. And this isn't limited to small guards, although we're going to talk about that later on. Big guards and even demigods like KD have the ability to create some insane stuff that you couldn't do in NBA 2K25. Part of it is that the animations in 2K26 feel like they're more free. We're going to give you big guards and tall guards that could move much more easy. I'm talking about KD initiating some crazy escape combo that generates a lot of distance. And when comboed with the momentum generated out of these moves into his shot creation bag like his step back jumpers, watch out. More importantly, why those step back jumpers are important is because the cancel system continues to be one of the most flexible ways for you to create your shot in NBA 2K26. I think NBA 2K25 introduced a game changer with the cancel system. It removed the reliance for a lot of players to have just a specific dribble style to speed boost. Not a lot of people knew about the cancel system and how empowering it was. In 2K26, if you build off that skill from 25 in combination with some of the insane SIGs, that is going to get crazy out there. I had a great time using KD, showcasing a lot of his ability to chain old returning favorites like the momentum crossover and the misdirection dribble, more on that later on, combined with his crazy escape dribble combos, and the misdirection dribble, for example, with his step back crossover, which is what they're calling their new escape step back this year. KD generates so much shifty movement, moving forward and backward, and now moving side to side with an insane combo move that's part of his escape dribble package. This is where the enhanced speed of NBA 2K26 gets scary. I think a lot of people will be pleased with the animations that are faster and create more distance, and the ability to launch out of your different moves very quickly and much more easily and less restricting as it was in 2K25. So I think this is the natural next step for dribbling, and I think a lot of people will be pleased. And I'm not just talking about the people from the sim community. I think more casual players that prefer a more arcadey type of feel will also feel at home with this system. Next, I want to talk about the changes to shooting. I think a lot was made about the shooting in 2K25, how it felt random because of the pervasiveness of RNG in 2K25. 2K said, we'll have a pure green window for NBA 2K26 with no RNG. And as a result, what I've noticed is that if you are good with a specific player, if you have the right badges, things are going to get scary. The last game I played, I used Steph Curry against the Houston Rockets. I was damn near unstoppable shooting through all sorts of contests. As long as you know your player's shot release, things can get really scary. Shooting feels great if you know the release of who you are using. But when I had to shoot with guys that I wasn't too familiar with, I'm talking about Jimmy Butler, Brandon Pajemski, Moses Moody, for example, I was useless. So you'll need the time to take to lab a lot of these shot releases. And honestly, I didn't have the time to do that in community day. I just had to go and play, pick up and play and shoot. But for guys that I knew their games and their shot releases, like Steph, like KD, like Shea, like Devin Booker, I was lights out. Introduced in 2K26 is the addition of the quick shot release. You do this by holding L2 in anticipation of a pass and then just going into your natural shooting motion. I wouldn't necessarily call it a no-dip jumper, but I will call it a quick release jumper. Because even though 2K calls it no-dip, you still have to, depending on where you catch the ball, you will still see that set and dip. That leads to a faster release, sure, but it's not necessarily a no-dip jumper. Number two, I was surprised at how smooth it is once you get used to the timing. So you want to make sure that you hold L2 as you initiate a pass. Push the right stick down or hold square and then lead to that quick shot. I think this is going to be a useful tool, but this is going to be a big tool, in particular for 5v5 modes where a lot of people will be sagging off of the corner, for example. If they're falling asleep, pass that ball to the corner, and if you got a quick release ready, that should be money. Thing in 2K26 that I think deserves some focus is the enhanced rhythm shooting. Now, rhythm shooting changed in 2K26. Now you do not have to perfectly time your shot release. Now you just have to make sure that the tempo in which you push the right stick up, for example, after your rhythm shot is engaged, lines up with the animation of your release. So you want to make sure the tempo of your right stick input matches the shot motion of who you're using. What this means in 2K26 is now you do not have to have perfect timing for your shot release. You need to have perfect tempo. So you have to be locked into your animation, and I'll release a tutorial for this once I get my hands on the game and have the whole hand cam just to show you how everything is set up. But if you rhythm shot in 2K25, you will be at home in 2K26 as well. The button, and I will say that it feels better compared to 2K25, but that's just based on early tests. I only did one shoot around with the button and maybe half a quarter with the button, but I immediately found myself returning to rhythm shooting, in particular because I take a lot of moving shots. And unfortunately, for those of you who rely on button shooting, initiating step back jumpers with the shot button and the left stick is not as responsive. I would recommend that if you are a moving shot creator, you will want to use the stick. Get acclimated with it really quickly, because I saw a lot of comments from 2K25 where they said, I wish I shot with rhythm shooting earlier on. I think it will pay off. I haven't seen the impact of like a quicker shot release versus a slower shot release. I need more time to lab to make sure that my motion from a early shot release by flicking the right stick up first very quickly. But the speed of my shot timings is something that I'll need to work on. But overall, I think enhanced rhythm shooting feels natural and intuitive and a great step up from 2K25. Again, on Hall of Fame difficulty with Steph Curry, just take a look at some of the insane shots that I'm making. Crazy contests all up to 40 or 50%. It's just incredible what you could do with enhanced rhythm shooting. Maybe naturally why I'm mistiming my shot is because I'm allowing the feedback of the defender to get to me, but as you can see, just being able to nail these shots by perfectly timing your tempo feels incredible. I don't know if this shooting is necessarily better than 2K25, but I do know that it's allowed me to shoot through some ridiculous shots in the community day build, at least. I'm not kidding when I tell you that I was making all sorts of ridiculous nonsense. With that, I want to talk about the post game and the new mechanics that they introduced. First of all, the post game shares the same DNA as with the recent 2Ks. You hold L2, you pivot your foot by tapping the left stick in any direction. You execute your shimmies or swings and sometimes pivot as well by tapping the right stick in any different direction. You can post exit by rotating the right stick or just releasing the left stick or releasing L2 as you move the left stick in any direction. So if you've operated in the post in the past, should immediately feel familiar. So I would say that 99% of the post game stayed intact. The 1%, however, is the addition of post go-to shots. And post go-to shots are basically an extension of the go-to shot system that was introduced in 2K25. While in a post-up position, that includes back to the basket or while facing up, you can hold the right stick up to initiate a combo sequence. Now, these combo sequence range from anything from a shimmy fadeaway, different types of dream shake moves, face-up moves that include swings, arm swings, or the signature mellow face up and create space with your forearm into a fadeaway or into a hook shot. They include that Jokic swing into a hook shot that I think Shingun also has, and I think Domantas Sabonis also has something similar. But where it gets fun is that actually post go-to shots are more diverse for your big guard builds and hell even for small guards. Take a look at Jimmy Butler or SGA, for example. As long as they're in a face-up position while still holding L2, if you hold up on the right stick, they will initiate a jab step into a pound dribble into a fadeaway, for example. SGA has a post-hop shot tied to his go-to shot, but also he has a ridiculous signature fadeaway animation tied to his post-go-to shot. But anything that has a dribble tied into it, you can cancel out of and combo out of very quickly. Where it gets challenging is you'll have to memorize the timing windows for a lot of these post go-to shot cancels. And I believe when people figure out what you can do out of these cancels, we can see some crazy stuff. Um, I barely scratched the surface of what you can do, but what I did do was it can get scary out there for post players. The post game feels a little bit difficult. Part of it is that the timing is a little bit weird compared to your normal animations. So I was missing a lot of hook shots just because I didn't know if they were going to be slow or they were going to be fast. And when you combine that with how the defense is playing you, it can still get difficult. That said, I think with more time, you can get used to the timing and it might come more natural. But the post game is an extension of 2K25 with the big addition of post go-to shots, of course, and the flexibility that that system allows if you're able to cancel and combo out of certain moves. Next thing is defense. I argued that this was going to be the most important part of the game because of how they juiced offense, sped everything up. I think defense was better than I thought it would be, but I'm not sure it's where we need it to be when things get crazy. When people start figuring things out, it's going to be interesting to see if defense holds up. I think the improved physicality and body ups, for example, can get you some really nice stagger animations and stone walls in some instances. I've found examples, for example, I found examples where after I bump someone, I was surprised at how quickly they could recover and basically blow by past me while I'm still in that recovery animation after a bump. So that's one thing you should watch out for. It's not just initiating that initial bump, which I think is easier to do this year compared to last year. They removed the defensive cutoff animation from the perimeter, which was done by holding L2 and R2 and tapping the right stick left or right to basically cut off your defender. That's now integrated in your ability to guess whether your matchup is going left or right. You will get those cutoff animations. Those cutoff animations result in body bumps or in sometimes complete staggers. So I think the physicality is great from the perimeter. It's just that I think the offense, because of the quickness and responsiveness in which ways you can counter, sometimes leaves the defense at a disadvantage. One thing that you also need to get used to is to release L2 even though you're trying to initiate the fast shuffle motion. Because of bad habits, for example, I kept holding L2 and R2 when I should be releasing L2, because while holding L2, even though you're holding sprint, while you're doing your fast shuffle motion, it's still way slower compared to when your defender is in a full-on sprint. So you're going to have to establish those habits of trying to initiate the right position. I also don't advise that people play their matchup on their hip. I think this is true for past 2Ks, but even more true now. With your ability to, put your defender in jail, or blow by past your defender, I think what you'll want to do is really play honest defense and keep in front of your matchup. Of an on-ball steal guy, but what I will say is that I tried to do it out of position and it would throw me in a recovery animation that would punish me as a defender, allowing my matchup to blow by past me. Now, that said, I did not initiate a lot of steals just because I'm not that kind of defender. I think that will be better tested in a live multiplayer game situation. But what Mike Wang said on removing the canned animations for steals, I did not encounter a single one of them. The best way I got steals was staying in position in front of my defenders. The ball sort of feels more live than it was in years past. For example, if you try to spam that De'Aaron Fox push cross or any push cross that would lead you into your defender, it will naturally lead to loose balls as a result. So I think for steals, I think they're in a better place than 2K25. They are emphasizing a lot more skill-based components to defense as well as offense. For steals, by spamming steals alone, I don't think that they felt as cheesy as in, let's say, 2K24 pre-patch. But this is something I need to test for sure. Same goes with blocks. If you just jump randomly, hoping that, one, you will randomly get your hip to bump the ball. That won't happen as much, or it didn't necessarily happen to me in my entire playtest. What did happen was that I needed to time my blocks. But I will say this. If you are out of position and you're using a fast and athletic player, the recovery speed going from the paint to the corner, for example, is still pretty ridiculous, and we'll discuss this later on when I talk about gameplay balance. I think blocks need to be timed. If not, there's also a bit of a recovery animation for blocks that will lead to instant blow-bys in certain situations where I panicked and fell back to 2K25 habits where really the best contest was by jumping. And as a result, that hard close out, the AI opponent, for example, will blow by past me and just get to the bucket or hit me with a midi in between. Where I think defense could use more tuning. One, I went crazy with Wemby on, I think, all-star difficulty. And granted, that might just be a matter of difficulty, but also in my Hall of Fame playtests, I didn't have issues with Giannis getting to the basket, although that's Giannis, or Jimmy Butler, or even Kuminga. I do think that interior defense might need to be tuned for certain situations, but there's a delicate balance because I think the close shot post game is not going to be in a position where it's going to be an efficient shot for 2K26. So how they balance interior defense, because I was able to mash with both Giannis and Wemby, for example, I think that's going to be a delicate balance for 2K to figure out in 2K26. I didn't do a lot of standing dunks or a lot of drop step cheese, but as I said, in general, trying to even initiate mismatches in the post using guys like Şengün or Domas Sabonis didn't lead to a lot of good results, even if I had a shorter defender on me, so long as they are in proper position. But for certain situations where I was able to get under the basket, for example, with Wemby, it was basically no defense was going to offer that resistance. Will need to improve a lot more. And granted, this is a pre-release build, is help defense. Help defense, in my opinion, is too aggressive. where in certain situations I'm in the right position, but I still see 2K sending help my way, leading to open shots as a result. Because one thing that the AI is good at this year, and wasn't marketing fluff from the blog, is that the new drive and kick system is extremely punishing. The AI does really well in reading when it should make certain passes, especially when they get an advantage to the paint. Imagine the typical Warriors 4-on-3 playmaking out of a pick and roll. The AI can get that insane. I saw Luka make some incredible passes just because he's able to get to the paint, force the help defense to collapse, and the help defense is a little bit too aggressive. And as a result, I gave up so many wide open threes and corner threes because I think the help defense is too aggressive. And this is one area where I think it's going to be important. As I mentioned earlier on, the quick shot mechanic is actually very good. And if help defense is too aggressive, that's going to lead to a lot of open shots. Talk about what I found with the contest system. I think the contest system is a product of gameplay balance. I saw a lot of ghost contests, a lot of contests that make sense that don't make sense. For example, SGA stumbled trying to go around the screen, and I think I got a 60% contest as a result. The ghost contests were my main problem, but I think it's 2K trying to balance out shooting. And I think while a lot of people did not like the 2K25 contest system, I think it's fair. I think 2K25's contest system was fair pre-patch. Post-patch, when 2K removed the automatic contest out of the hands up, they had to change the way contests were made, where you almost had to jump to contest the shot. But in 2K26, you should be fine with hands up defense for the most part, unless you're going up against someone like KD, who's able to just elevate over everyone and who has, I think, Deadeye on Gold or Hall of Fame. So I think the contest system is inconsistent. But as someone who understood the contest system for 24 and 25, I think that 26 saw a lot of ghost contests and some unnatural contests that I think is a product of gameplay balance. Example for the quick shot mechanic, because the quick shot mechanic is so good, I think they had to juice up the contests. So one, the contest closeout speeds and the ability to jump to your matchup is still pretty insane. I did get a few shooting fouls from jump shots, but not as frequent as I'd like. In some instances, I'd still get tackled and no foul was called. And in some ways, just closing out with your hands up was more than enough to get you a heavy contest. So I think the contest system is inconsistent and might need some tuning as well. Now let's talk about slashing. I think slashing took a huge step up from 2K25. Everything from the dunk meter to, I think, layups are the biggest beneficiaries of the changes to 2K26. So in 2K25, there were only a few layups I was comfortable taking. The standard layup with physical finisher, and your Euro step layups with your layup mixmaster, for example, or your hop gathers into up and unders. Scoops were nerfed to the ground and floaters were nerfed to the ground. 2K26, all of these are viable, with I think scoops being the most difficult just because of the variability of timing, but floaters are good again. Euro steps are great. Physical finisher layups are excellent. And I think the slow gather Euro, the slow gather Euro, where people thought it was just a gimmick. I'm gonna break this down in a separate video, but the slow gather Euro, I think is gonna be one of quietly the most cheesy and overpowered mechanics in 2K26. I'm curious to see whether they tune this in the final build, because as you'll see in that video, so I think overall, layups are back to how they were. Not necessarily as in 2K24. The Devin Booker overpowered blow-by layup is still there. Devin Booker's floater, his standard floaters and his stroll floater is faster. I couldn't quite get the 24 OP floater to go. But I'll stay tuned for that. But overall, I think slashing is in a great spot. So in the gameplay blog, a lot was being made about layups being now only timing based and no real player percentage. Layups felt great. There were a few layups where I completely fumbled on the timing, but as long as I was open, I think a good chunk of them went in. I'm gonna say about 80% maybe. But for those that were egregious in the way I mistimed them, they wouldn't go in. Like I did not get a very late layup, for example, go in, even though I was open. But layup timing, I've been saying this for a while now. People need to move to layup timing, and I think they feel great in 2K26. I think not as good as 24, but I think the natural evolution from how bad 25 was. All right, so for you guys that play 5-on-5, what was the 5-on-5 experience like? First, spacing felt really good. There were still oddities, of course, where sometimes I needed to call for a screen or call for an ISO to get some guys that were crowding me in my space a little bit too much. But in general, you'll see a lot of really great spacing, especially for the AI and for you as well. Again, there are some oddities where, depending on where I want to go to the floor, sometimes certain actions wouldn't activate. But spacing was great. And I think a lot was made of the spacing engine in 25, that much better in 26. Especially when you go up against the AI, and as you're seeing these clips, the AI is really good at spacing the floor, getting people in different spots and reacting accordingly. So the next thing about the AI is, yes, the AI is able to cook you based on reads. So now, for example, if I go under a screen, the AI won't hesitate to pull up, and at least in my playtest, make a fair amount of those dare shots. The AI is good at recognizing in certain situations where you're cheating off ball, and therefore just give an easy hook pass to the cutting defender, for example. Or once again, the improvements to the drive and kick system for the AI is something that's going to be punishing if you're a little bit lazy on defense and you like to cheat off of those corners, for example. I've been burned multiple times as a result of the combination of the overhelp and help defense, and at the same time, the improvements in the drive and kick system. I also saw the AI run plays and use freelances, although I think the 4 out 1 in freelance was used a little bit too much, but I wasn't paying too close of an attention. The AI would frequently call sets, and when things broke down, things flowed a little bit more naturally compared to previous 2Ks. I don't think there were too many improvements in the playbook. I did not run too many plays. I think I only ran a few plays with the Warriors. Most of my gameplay was on ISO, but I think the playbook stayed mostly intact. They were updating it way up to 2K25's end cycle. So I think that we still should have a relatively fresh playbook based on those latest additions from 2K25. I think one thing you'll also notice in general is that ProPLAY is more apparent, not just in your shot creation moves, for example. There are a ton of new animations that, you know, if you don't really pay too close attention, you'll take some of those animations for granted, anything from rebounding to passing. And just a quick note on passing, I think passes feel way smoother. Um, Jump passes are not the way to go. I saw a few fumble catches, but in general, I think passing is pretty good. I need to test this in multiplayer modes or in rec, for example, but passing felt snappy, new pass animations felt good, but this is something I'll need to look at more closely. So in general, I think 2K26 is the natural evolution from 2K25, perhaps combined with a lot of player feedback, which a lot of your complaints in theory should be addressed. But 2K26 feels really good. My concerns are on the defensive end of the floor. Uh, the body up system feels great when it works, but once again, the ability of people to break out of those body bumps and launch out of them quickly is something that I want to take a look at more closely. The help defense needs some work. I think the shot contest system is inconsistent, if not a little bit too forgiving. And by too forgiving, I mean that, even if you're a distance away, some contests still register. But I think that's a product of gameplay balance. Overall, the game feels fast. The combos feel more responsive. The return of some dribble moves that were removed in past 2Ks is a welcome sight. and the way you can combo out of them and chain things together with an increasingly impressive cancel system combined with more shot creation animations, I think makes 2K26 the 2K that most people wanted out of 25. I did enjoy 25, I'll stand by that, but I think recognizing what a lot of people want out of their 2K, I think 2K26 addresses a lot of those concerns. It's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out, because you know, if there was a 2K that people could break, it might be this one. The new motion engine, I think, is something that you feel rather than you see. But in general, foot planting has been, more or less intuitive. But overall, I only had roughly 8 hours with the game, 8, 9 hours with the game. Not enough to make any sort of reasonable judgment. And certainly because I was playing against the AI and not in a non-controlled environment where I was playing against, online players who know the meta and who already broke the game down. It's tough to say for sure, but I think this is a 2K, at least in the early stages, where a lot of people will be happy with whether the defense holds up and whether the game doesn't break in terms of because of the flexibility the game allows, especially with the way builds are, being marketed as now being more flexible than ever in their courtside report with your cap breakers. I'm wondering if the gameplay holds up when they decide to break things in my team and in my career. But so far, my play now tests have gone great. I think this is the 2K that people wanted out of 25, a faster, more responsive, more fun for most people 2K, including me. I had a lot of fun in 2K26. A lot of people think that as a sim player, I don't want faster, more responsive gameplay. I think that's something that we unanimously can say that we all want. I just found a way to work around it in 2K25 because of the cancel system and, finding the right animations. But I think you don't have to find those animations in 26 as much as you did in 25. But there you go. Those are my gameplay impressions for NBA 2K26. Once again, thank you to Evan and the NBA 2K team for flying me out. Um, can't thank you guys enough for helping me stay relevant as a voice for 2K. Want to also shout out Wayne Nang from 2K Singapore previously, who's now working in NBA Asia. He was a big part in helping me out in the last community day, but also creating content. But lastly, I'd also want to thank everyone that I met there in Community Day. The guys at 2K TV were awesome. I met Chris Manning in person, and I met Mike Wang. I forgot to tell you about that. Met Mike Wang and talked to him for about a good 15 minutes about the game and game design. He was super cool and just someone that I've always wanted to pick his brain on. Um, the guys at the community team and 2K TV team were awesome, and yeah, not this again wouldn't be possible without the support from you guys. So I hope that you are a little bit more informed as a result of this video. I will have a separate video where I answer most of your questions. So this is an opportunity to ask more questions and let me know what you want me to discuss. So hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.